Today I'll be reviewing the newest EV sedan from Mercedes, a 2023 Mercedes EQE 350. Now the EQE is a smaller version of the EQS. Both look very similar on the outside and on the inside, but this is a little bit smaller and it's meant to compete with the Tesla Model S. So how good is this brand new EV sedan from Mercedes? Let's find out. First thing I want to talk about is the outside, because I really like the way this EQE looks. Mercedes made a big splash with the EQS when it first debuted. It was very different. And the EQE is just a smaller version of it. And that's a good thing because it still has all the right curves and it just looks good. It looks different. It doesn't look like a big car, but if you look at the dimensions, this is within an inch of the Tesla Model S. From the width to the length, within an inch. The Model S looks much bigger than this EQE. So Mercedes did a really good job to make this EQE look small, yet it has the interior space of a mid-size sedan. In front of the driver door, there's a little slot, and I thought that was a charging port, but it looks too small. However, once you open it, you realize, yes, it's for your washer fluid. I've never ever seen that before. It's just different. And the charging port is where you usually fill the gas, right near the backside. Now, speaking of charging, this Mercedes can charge from 10% to 80% in about 30 minutes, according to Mercedes. And in total, you're getting around 300 miles of range, which isn't too shabby. Now, if you're charging at home using 240 volt, it'll be about 9.5 to 10 hours. If you're trying to use 120 volt to charge, it's gonna take you all night and more. Now, as for power, you're getting 288 horsepower and over 400 pound-feet of torque. Now, of course, this is an EV vehicle, which means the torque kicks in right away. So it definitely feels pretty darn fast around town. 0 to 60 comes in around 5.5 seconds, which isn't too shabby, but passing speed, getting up to speed, it feels fantastic. Now, something else that's fantastic with this EQE is cabin insulation and sound within the cabin. Basically, there's none. It's so quiet inside. I mean, wow. Mercedes did such a good job. There's such a night and day difference between this and, say, a Tesla Model S or any Tesla out there. Teslas are just loud on the inside. And this is just so quiet. There's nothing. Right now, I'm driving among a lot of cars and them passing by, like nothing. The only thing I hear is the sound experience. There's like this simulated pulsing inside this car. I'll get to that in a little bit, but that's the only thing I hear. Unfortunately, with the higher dash, it makes the windshield smaller. The windshield is really raked, so the overall viewing angle is a little bit smaller. The Mercedes wants you to sit a little bit higher, but then you just feel like you're too close. Your head is too close to the top. So there's a balance there. If you're on a taller side or you have a taller torso, you may not like it. Besides the front, the rear visibility is also very small, tiny in fact. It's really raked in the back and you have a high trunk height, and when you combine the two together, you can hardly see anything back there. And I've noticed that manufacturers, especially EV manufacturers, have started doing that, paying less attention to the rear, because I guess they figure you don't need to look back there that much, or maybe you could see on the giant screen. I don't know. Me personally, I like to have good visibility in the rear, and you don't get that inside this EQE. Now, as for the cabin, very nice. Very similar to the new S-Class, similar to the new EQS, and the EQE has a really nice cabin. I like the way the dash looks. I like the way the center console, the floating console, everything combined with the large screens. I like the balance of leather, suede, ambient lighting, trim, aluminum, black panels. I think it just looks good on the inside. Mercedes absolutely nailed it. Now, speaking of screens, you do get two large ones. Of course, you get one for your digital gauge cluster, 12.3 inches, It's right in front of your face. It's nice, and you can customize it many different ways. You can have different views. You can have just navigation or just sport mode. I mean, there's a ton of views for you to select from. And of course, you see all the essential information like your speed, the speed limit, how much range you still have. Also shows you a couple different menu items as well. And your braking recuperation. I'll get to that in a little bit. Of course, you get another giant screen for your infotainment system. And it's angled slightly. I think it's okay. It kind of looks like a giant iPad laying on the dash, even though it is integrated, but it gives me that vibe like you just like slapped on an iPad. But the interface, the graphics, the brightness, the responsiveness, all top notch. Now there's one downside to these giant screens, and that is there's no physical buttons or knobs anywhere. Everything is either touch or some kind of touch interface. And you know what? Sometimes you just want a good button here or there. For example, like your volume, there is this toggle that's built in on the bottom of the screen. It's hard to notice sometimes. And also the one on your steering wheel, you got to get used to sliding up and down. You know, it's just, there's a learning curve to it. If there was just a knob, it would be very simple. Now, besides the missing buttons and the knobs, the screen itself has a lot going on. Like your climate controls are built in, right? All your main menu, everything that you want to configure is within. And it could be overwhelming, especially if you're driving. Now, if you're sitting there, you have time to figure it out, great. But if you're driving, like right now, and I'm trying to look at it while paying attention to the road, it's very tough. It's very tough to go through the various different menu items to go to where I want to. So that's the thing. You got to be careful. Now, getting back to the drive, I didn't mention about the steering yet. The steering is actually really darn good. First of all, I love the steering wheel. It's very Mercedes-like. I like the thickness and feel. I'm not so sure about the spoke setup. It's a 3-spoke, but the mid spokes are split between, so it's really like 5-spoke. But besides the looks, it feels good. And you do have paddle shifters in the back, not to shift for your braking recuperation, but the overall feeling is great. EV cars generally have really good steering. Now, something else that helps the steering with this EQE is rear wheel steering. Yes, you have 4 wheels that turn. The back ones turn up to 10%, which definitely helps when you're trying to make sharp corners and bends. In terms of braking, you have 3 types of regenerative braking. You have strong recuperation, you have normal, and then you have none. When you're in none or no recuperation, the EQE feels like a normal car. You let off the throttle, it just coasts on. It feels very normal. And the brake feel itself feels like a normal car, so that's fantastic. If you go into normal, you'll feel a little bit of regenerative braking. It's not that bad, it's very subtle, but if you let off the throttle, you'll definitely feel less coasting, but still, it's very, very subtle. Now, if you're a fan of one pedal driving and you want to basically not ever use the brake pedal, then live in a strong recuperation. But there's a big gap between strong and normal. You could definitely feel it. Normal still almost feels like a normal drive. But in strong, as soon as you let off that throttle, you feel the sudden rush of braking, and a lot of you guys may not like that. Now, as for some of the features you'll find inside the EQE, well, air suspension for one. But it's not just regular air suspension. It's a system where the Mercedes actually uses a camera and studies the roads ahead of you. So if there's a giant pothole, it'll try to adjust and actually warn you saying pothole ahead. Pretty cool system. Also, heated and ventilated seats, memory seats, those are pretty standard. You also get seat kinetics, which moves the lumbar around so you don't get back fatigue. You also get a power trunk lid, which is a sizable trunk inside, and you can fold down the second row. That's nice. And also you get power door handles. I'm not so sure I actually like the power handles. Sometimes they just don't pop out when you want them to. Now, even though this EQE comes fully loaded with all the gadgets and goodies. There are a few that I want to highlight. The first thing is the sound experience. Because this is an EV vehicle, Mercedes wanted to give it a bit more flair with sound. So you can choose sound experience, roaring pulse, vivid flux, or silver waves. And this affects a few things. First of all, when you get in the car, you hear this humming. So I was wondering what that was when I first got in, and it's part of the sound experience. Also, when you lock your car, when you unlock your car, when you accelerate, it sounds different. So that's pretty cool how you can select your sound experience cater to what you like. Also, there's a pretty cool voice assistant. So just like Alexa, but you talk to your Mercedes and you can tell it to do a number of things, including changing your ambient lights. Speaking of ambient light, of course, you can select hundreds of colors inside and you can change the brightness, the effect. So while you're driving, they will have different movement, and there's so many places that get the ambient light, even inside the vents if you look carefully. The camera system is also very nice. Many cars these days have a 360 view. And it's no different with this EQE, but it's just done better. The stitching of all the cameras together gives you a clear 360 view of around your car. It's really amazing. And of course, you could use your finger to scroll around everywhere around you. It's the best 360 system I have ever seen. It's really nice. The last cool feature I want to highlight is the panoramic sunroof. You don't get one, you get two. And when you open and close, the cover goes in opposite directions and has a cool effect, and it's really nice. So what are some of the negatives to this EQE? Well, there's a few. Rear passenger space, I got to talk about that. In terms of legroom, decent. I'm 5'10", you can see 3 to 4 inches of legroom, no problem. Headroom is where you have a problem. If you're kind of sitting in the middle, then you're okay. But if you're near the side, your head hits. And I'm not the tallest guy out there. If you're above 6 feet, your head will definitely hit on top. You also do get a wireless charger, which is nice, but it's placed in a weird, awkward position. It's like all the way inside the center console. And if you happen to have your cup holder out, then it totally blocks your reach inside. So yes, you do get it, but it's in a weird spot. And because this is a Mercedes, pretty much all the features are not standard, optional. And some of the most basic luxury items like heated steering wheel and heads-up display, they're not standard. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is pricing, because this is still a mystery. If you look at Mercedes' website, they don't give you a whole lot of information on this 2023 EQE. Even though there's been a lot of reviewers that have reviewed it already, there's no official pricing documentation yet. But most people are estimating this EQE 350 will come in around 70,000-ish, mid-70s, and probably with all the things that you can configure, it'll head up into the 90s and possibly 6 figures. Now, if you wanted more power, there will be an EQE 500 that will be coming out that will have over 400 horsepower, but for now, you only have the 350. And in my opinion, this powertrain is plenty. You feel the torque, you feel plenty of power already. 0 to 60 is way faster than most sedans or cars out there. So I think this is pretty good already, but if you're looking for more, it's coming. Thanks for watching. Smash up the like, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for my future review videos. Take care. Bye-bye.